All right, so let's jump right into the 3 steps to achieving your financial goals in 2019. As I mentioned in the introduction video, goals are very important that we have and set financial goals. It kind of gives us our guiding principles, something to work toward. Otherwise, we find ourselves just aimlessly wandering through life if we don't have anything that we're working toward. So the agenda for today during this webinar is going to be a quick introduction about who I am, what qualifies me to talk to you about your money. We're going to talk about why should we plan, why do we need to have goals, why is it even important to have goals. Also in that process, we're going to talk about some of the things that keep you from achieving your goals, some of the obstacles that you may want to be on the lookout for as you go through this process of setting and ultimately achieving your goals. And then how do I actually do it? What are the 3 steps to accomplishing your goals? And then I'll leave you with some action items, some things that you can do that will benefit you and help you on this quest to achieving your financial goals. So the first things first, let's talk about who is this guy, Lonnie R. Matthews. Maybe you've heard of me, maybe you heard me speak. And if you have, then you'll know I'm very passionate about personal finance and helping people get where they want to be, need to be, and should be financially based on their current situation. I run a nonprofit organization called Alliance Financial Ministries. This organization has been around since about 2002, and it was started by me, partly because I had some financial problems early on in life. My wife and I, we're the first 2 people in our family to graduate college, so we moved to Texas and made a whole bunch of money between the 2 of us, 6-figure bring home income for the household, and we just mismanaged money very poorly. So much so to the point to where in 2001 we were 2 months behind on our house payment. And had made in excess of $130,000 a year before combined. So it was really no reason for us to be behind, other than the fact that we had a poverty mindset. And when you have a poverty mindset, no matter how much money you make, you're going to always live in poverty, because you're going to subsequently create situations in poverty in your life. And that's where you're going to live, no matter how much money you make. So, nobody's to blame. We did not have the financial education or tools needed. And that is why I started this nonprofit. And we've been doing workshops and seminars and things like that for the last 17 years. And that's kind of who I am, what qualifies me to talk to you about money. I've done a lot of things in my life that I feel like I'm proud of that would qualify me. I do have a bachelor's degree in finance and I have a master's degree in accounting, but those aren't what qualify me to talk to you about money. Those are great accomplishments. Those are things that I'm very proud of, but that's not it. I've actually written 2 books on personal finance and co-authored a couple of books, and I do get a chance to travel and speak around the country, but that's not what makes me the expert. I think the thing that makes me the expert the most is the fact that I've done a lot of dumb things with my money, just like everybody else. The difference between me and everybody else is I learned from my mistakes. And it was that learning from those mistakes that I put together these tools and things that I promise you, will help you if you apply them. But the biggest thing is you've got to change who you are. You've got to change this space between your ears to actually get ahead when it comes to financial literacy. So that's the story about me and who I am. Hopefully, those things will satisfy your curiosity as to, who this person is and why should I listen to him about my money. I'll say this, I don't have all the answers, and maybe everything that I've done or I am doing will work for you. Every situation is unique, but a lot of these principles, just time-tested principles that honestly, they're going to work. In some way, shape, or form, you can see some improvement if you put together a plan and do these things that we're going to talk about, not only in this webinar, but over the course of the year as I bring different topics to you. So now, setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible to the visible. That was said by Mr. Tony Robbins, great motivational speaker, and I believe that he is very true. The first step in turning that invisible, those tangible, that dream into reality is setting a goal, getting your mind right in the right space, and then coming up with a plan of action to actually make those goals happen. It's one thing to set goals, but got to have a plan of action to make the goal happen. So now, why should we have goals? Well, goals give you a purpose. They give you a sense of direction, and they help you achieve more in this thing called life. I've always been famous for saying that the difference between living and existing is having goals. The difference between living and existing is simply having some goals, some things that I can wake up to look forward to every day. Otherwise, you just kind of existing. You're not living. You're just here, right? Now, let's talk a little bit about the things that can keep you from achieving your financial goals. What are the obstacles? We all have obstacles in our life and things that will impede our success. That's the definition of an obstacle, something that will impede your success. It doesn't keep you from being successful, but it can't impede it. You as the individual have to figure out a way around it, through it, or whatever it is, or whatever it takes. So the first obstacle that would keep you from achieving your goals, aside from not having goals, would be just lack of motivation, right? It's like, dude, I want to. Like this morning, I wanted to go running. I know I should have gone running. I didn't have any excuse for not going running. I just didn't. I wasn't motivated. So we all have those New Year's resolutions, but I am an avid runner. I love to run, but I've kind of fallen off the wagon and I've lost that motivation. So, a lot of times in life, we just lose the motivation to do the things that we know we should do. That's going to make us better. So the first obstacle that you have to overcome on the course of achieving your goals is to get motivated to do it. Now, once you've gotten the motivation and you've said, okay, this is something I want to do, then it's going to take a certain level of commitment and discipline. And I like to use both of those synonymously because they do require a lot of the same thing. In order to do anything in life, you got to be disciplined. The discipline to get up and go running, even if the weather's not good, and be committed to it. Meaning every time, if you're going to do it 3 days a week, like I said I am, then I got to get myself out there at least 3 days a week and run, right? And just be committed to that. So we got to overcome the lack of motivation, but we also got to find some discipline and commitment. Here's the thing about discipline. Discipline is a very contagious characteristic, meaning if you have discipline in one area of your life, then it's easy to translate that discipline into another area. You just have to be cognizant and aware of that. So if you do something on a routine basis and you have the discipline to do it, even when you aren't told or, that forced to do it, then you have discipline. You just got to transfer it to other areas, like your financial situation, for instance. Another thing that can keep us from achieving our goal is our past failures. Oftentimes we hold on to the things that didn't go right in the first place with us. And, you get this old mindset, well, it didn't work the last time and I don't want to keep trying, right? So you got to get past your past. In other words, to get ahead in life, you must get past your past. You got to let that thing go, that thing that's keeping you from setting some goals and achieving those goals. Maybe it didn't work in the past, right? It happens. Figure out why and keep moving. That's what makes successful people successful. They don't sit and dwell on the past. I didn't learn a lot about finance growing up, and I've made a lot of financial mistakes with my money in the past, but now I made it a point to do better and let the past be in the past. The other thing that keeps people from achieving their goals would be the fear. Fear. It was once said that fear stood for false expectations appearing real, meaning that it's not really real. Sometimes fear is in our head. Now, sometimes you should have a healthy fear, right? Like you shouldn't walk on the top of a building without a safety net and not be fearful of falling. That's just foolishness. But then sometimes we're afraid of things that really aren't there. We're afraid to fail, right? What if I try really hard and it doesn't work? So what? Try again and keep trying. Or the other thing is the fear of success. Like, what if I try this and it works? Whoa, well, then that means more is expected of me. Right? So a lot of times that place between fear of failure and fear of success is what we call comfort zone, right? That space, our comfort zone is where I'm too afraid to try. I'm too afraid not to try. So I'm just going to stay right there in this space. And a lot of times, a lot of people spend their whole life in their comfort zone and never really accomplish the things that they're designed to accomplish. So if you want to do something different, you got to become someone different to accomplish that, right? So now that we've talked about the different obstacles, hopefully you can realize that, a lot of those things can prevent you. And if one or two of those obstacles is right now you're dealing with, I would say just continue to move forward and deal with that and fight through. So planning. Why should we plan our financial future? Well, it's very important that we do have a plan, because the truth is you're going to make a lot of money in your working lifetime. I mean, at least $3 to $4 million if you have an average income. Average income is about $60,000 a year. If you made that for 30 years, that could easily be $2.5–3 million in your working lifetime. So it is important that we plan our money. So here's what I want you to do for me. Do me a favor. Think about your annual income. You know what I'm talking about. That amount of money that you earn and the one that they're going to tell you that you earned when you got your W-2 this month, right? Look at that amount and multiply that amount by 5 years. Right? Now, and so that's the amount of money that you're going to earn over the next 5 years. And that's not even including any raises or changes in income that you might have. So if you're average, according to the United Census Bureau, the average income in the United States is about $60,000 a year, maybe a little bit less. But if you make about average $60,000 a year in 5 years, that's $300,000. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. You're going to make $300,000 in the next 5 years if you have an average income of $60,000. So the question becomes then, well, how much of that are you going to have available or will at least be able to account for, right? Now, some of it you've already obligated to pay certain bills, your mortgage, your car notes. So you're not going to have the full access to the $300,000. But then the question becomes, how much of that $300,000 will I have access to? Okay. Now, and so my point now is, now that you have that number and that figure in your mind, how is your life going to be 5 years from now? Is it going to be better, worse, or about the same? Better, worse, or about the same? I'll let you decide, okay? But that's a lot of money. In fact, just like I was saying here earlier, it's important that you set some financial goals and get your house in order, because as I was saying, someone that made $50,000 a year, you're going to make $2.8 million in a 30-year working lifetime, right? If someone that made about $75,000, you're going to have almost $5 million that you've made in 5 years. 30 years. So it's important that you spend some time studying and paying attention to your finances and figuring out where you want to go with them. And then, setting up a plan. I'm going to share with you 3 steps to accomplish your goals here in the next couple of moments. But, it's important that we do something, because they say if you're not doing something by default, you're doing nothing. That's just the bottom line of it, right? So now the big question becomes, how do you accomplish your goals? How do you do that? Well, before we get into how do we do it, or before I reveal to you the 3 steps, let me just say this. Starting this month in January, studies show that about 45% of the United States, or working adults, should I say, will make some type of resolution, some type of goal, whether it's I want to lose weight, I want to save more money, I want to get in better shape, whatever that is. I want to stop drinking or smoking, whatever. About 45% of the population is going to make some type of New Year's resolution, right? So if we got 350 million folks here in the United States, we're talking about 100-something million people are going to make some type of resolution. Now, the thing is, though, studies show that by June, or it should be 2019, by June of this year, 2019, 6 months from now, less than half of the goals seekers or people that said they were going to set goals will be on track. In fact, only about 1 in 5, 20% of those people are going to still be on track to accomplish their goals by June. So the question is, are you going to be one of those people? Well, you can be. Remember, you're going to have commitment and discipline. But then also, I want to share with you these 3 things that you can use that can help you achieve your goals and get on the right path. So if you're ready, I'm ready, because I don't want this thing to be too long. So I'm going to give you those 3 things right now. 3 things. Number 1 thing is you have to begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. Now, I read this book. This book's been out a long time ago. Stephen Covey wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think in the late 80s, which is it's a great book. But one of the habits or that the highly effective people had was they had to have a long range vision. You got to begin with the end in mind. In other words, where is it that I want to be ultimately? Because I need to know that in order to know what goals and things I need to accomplish today that's going to put me on that path, right? So does that make sense, right? So what I need for you to do as far as your finances are concerned, and you can use this for any other area, but just I'm focusing on finances. I want you to spend some time, right after the holidays, or depending on when you listen to this, just spend some quiet time and visualize. Just close your eyes and visualize your life. What does that look like 5 years from now financially? Meaning, how much money would you like to have saved to feel comfortable? What debts do you see yourself having to pay off between now and the next 5 years? Whatever it is, do you want to be able to, buy some real estate? That's something my wife and I are looking at doing. It's buying and flipping some houses and maybe getting a couple of rental properties. Those are the things that we can visualize ourselves doing. So you've got to begin with the end in mind. You've got to have a clear, concise picture of what your financial situation looks like for you to feel good in the next 2, 3, or 5 years. So you want to walk in the future, live that life mentally, visualize yourself having $20,000 in a savings account that you don't have to worry about getting laid off or anything like that. Visualize yourself not having that car payment, not having the debt that you have, and visualize yourself getting your check every payday. And all you have to do is take care of life bills. Visualize yourself doing that. And then you come back to the day and you set some goals that will allow you to get to that point. So step number 1 is you have to begin with the end in mind. You have to have a clear picture of where you want to be financially. That's the key. Begin with the end in mind. And so in the process of writing and creating some goals, then you've got to create some SMART goals, right? SMART goals are what we call specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, right? Don't just say, I want to save more money. Well, that's very vague, right? More money than you saved last year, just more money in general. I mean, it's kind of hard to figure that one out when you say I need to save more money. But if you set a goal to say, I want to save $2,000 in 12 months so that the next time I need to get my tire fixed or my car breaks down, I don't have to panic, right? And those kind of things happen. My wife and I, we drive older cars. And so my wife was saying the check engine light's on. And I was like, oh gosh, okay. And she drives a foreign vehicle, a Volvo, for crying out loud. So we basically have to take it to the dealer. But, there was a time in our life where we would have had to panic. I would have been like, oh my God, what is going to happen? What is this? How much is it going to be? And it wasn't bad. It was about $400 some repair that we needed to do. But we didn't panic. You know why? Because we got money saved. So imagine you had $2,000 in that same scenario. I mean, life is a whole lot different. You look at things differently when you have money saved. So the first goal you should probably have is to save some money out of each one of your paychecks. But it needs to be a specific amount, like $2,000. Is that measurable? Well, yeah, it's measurable because you can measure the progress. You can keep track of it. You open up a separate savings account or something like that, and you can watch that thing grow or not grow, depending on what you're doing each month. Is that achievable? Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm just convinced that anybody that's working, right, and making a decent wage, you can save $2,000 in a year. And even if you aren't making a decent wage, you can save something, a portion of your income. You just got to make this a habit, and you have to be committed to doing that. So it's achievable. It is. And then is it realistic? Well, yeah, it's definitely something that's doable and real. And then, of course, time-bound, so 12 months. A little bit later on in this webinar, I'm going to show you how to actually save $2,000 in the course of a year. And it's really not as hard as you would think it is. It's just that the reason you don't have it saved is because you haven't set a goal to save that amount. All right. So now, the second thing you want to do after beginning with the end in mind and coming up with some goals is you've got to write them down. They have to be written. They don't count if they're not written. I'm sorry. They don't count if they're not written. So a written goal is a goal not written down is nothing more than a dream. Take that dream, that idea out of your head, write it down, and take ownership of it. You ever notice when you take ownership of something, it changes your perspective. It changes the way you look at it, and it makes you more in tune with it, right? Just taking ownership of something. Here's an example. The car that you drive now, you remember when you first bought it? You remember when you took ownership of it? Didn't it seem like everybody was driving this car? I was like, man, I see this car more and more now since I got a new one. That's because you took ownership of it, and now you notice it. So same thing with your goals. You got to write them down and take ownership of them. And then you watch them start to happen. And you'll notice when, hey, wait a minute, I said I was going to save $2,000. I didn't save anything last month, because I'm measuring my progress, and I feel like I'm on pace, but right now I'm not, because I didn't save like I said I was last payday, right? So write them down, take ownership of them. And then the last step, the last thing that you need to do in order to achieve your financial goals in this new year, 2019, is you got to take action now. Take action now. Quick riddle here. It says there are 3 frogs on the log, and one of the frogs decided to jump off the log. How many frogs are on the log? How many frogs? Is it 2? Nope, it's not 2. It's still 3 frogs. Why? Because the one frog decided to jump off, but he never did, right? How many times have you decided to do something, but you don't ever follow through with it, right? So it's important that you take action now. So step number 1 is begin with the end in mind. Number 2 is to write your goals down. And then number 3, you got to take action. Take what I like to call authentic action. I was reading a book called The Energy of Money, and they talked about authentic action. And authentic action is any action that actually takes you closer to your goal compared to just action, right? Let's say if I want to stand on one side of the room and walk to the other side. An example of authentic action would be every step I make, I'm getting closer to my goal, which is to get to the other side. Just action would be I'm standing there, I'm stretching, I'm running in place, I'm getting myself together, I'm putting my shoes on, I'm making sure that my shoes are tied. Those are all things that make it seem like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing to get my goal. But the truth is, if you're not walking, then it's not authentic. All you're doing is just running in place, right? So you got to have authentic action. Those are the 3 things. I know you were probably looking for something deeper, something with a more philosophical meaning, but I'm sorry, this is not that webinar, right? Begin with the end in mind. Give it a try. Spend some time deciding where you want to be financially, what it is you want to accomplish. Put a time limit on it. Set some goals, right? Then once you set those goals, write them down. Write them down. Keep them where you can see them. Hold yourself accountable. Tell some family and friends about them. They can hold you accountable as well, okay? And then the last thing is take action now. Now, not later. Authentic action. As I mentioned before, authentic action is that action that takes place when we do the things that will take us from metaphysical to the physical reality. So metaphysical would be like out in space, where I can do a whole lot of more things in space than I could on Earth's gravity. It's that coming back from space down to Earth that really allows you to see what will and what won't work, right? So you just got to go beyond saying just do it, and then you just got to do it, right? Now, when it comes to goals, you want to break them up into different categories, right? You have short-term goals, which are goals that are at least 1 month to a year. So when you're writing your goals down, what are some things that I like to do or need to do to accomplish 1 month to a year from now, right? And then your midterm goals, anything beyond a year and beyond, but up to 3 years. So maybe you'll say, I want to be debt-free in 3 years, or at least have this amount of debt paid off in 3 years, right? Which would mean you'd have to write down your debt and figure out which ones that can be paid off in the next 3 years. And that's your goal, right? And then the long-term goals is how much do you want to have for retirement? What do you see yourself doing, 3, 5, 10 years from now? Like, what is my plan for my life? Not only, financially, but just other areas of your life, right? Like, what does retirement look like? I mean, those are the things that, my wife and I are thinking about these days. As I just turned 51, you're going to be 60 before you know it. Got to start thinking long term a little bit. Now, what I want to do is talk to you about how to reach your savings goals, right? And so before we do that, though, let's talk about goals themselves. Number one, they have to be written down. Number two, you got to watch the changing of your goals because things do happen, right? If you set out a goal to work out, 3 days a week, but then you got overtime at your job, obviously it gets a little bit challenging, but you can still figure out, maybe I can cut it down to 2 days. So sometimes you may have to change your goal. You want to set goals up to help. You don't want goals to be a hindrance to you, right? So a goal should basically be something that you have everything you need to do, but you just hadn't done it, right? Don't set a goal that you need all these extra things, and now that's not helping you anymore. It's hurting you. That's adding more to your plate. This needs to be something that you can do, like saving money. You can save money. You don't need anything to save money other than just a separate savings account. I mean, you can do that, and then just have the money redirected. Go change your direct deposit, whatever, right? Everybody needs to be involved in the goal setting process. So if you're a family, a husband and wife, you definitely want to get your spouse on board. You don't want to say we're saving money and then your spouse is spending money faster than you can make it, like a drunken congressman or something. I'm just saying, don't want to do that. And then you don't rewrite your goals every year. So we're at the top of the year now. So let's make sure you go ahead and spend some time writing your goals out before the end of this month gets here, right? Because then that's when things start to get a little bit faster and life starts to change, especially with the spring weather and everything. So the last thing I want to do is, remember I said I was going to show you how easy it is to save $2,000 in a year. So I want to do that before I close. And then I promise I won't leave you hanging. I didn't want to leave you hanging with this. So let's say you want to save $2,000 in a year. What's the easiest and the fastest way to do that? Well, here's the steps. First of all, determine how much money you want to save in a year. So we've said $2,000, right? Step number 2, how many paydays do you get in a year? How many paydays do you get? So if you get paid twice a month, meaning every other Friday, you're going to get 26 paychecks in a year. If you get paid bi-monthly, that's 24 paychecks in a year. And then, of course, monthly is 12. Take that number and divide it into the amount you want to save. So in our case, we want to save $2,000. We get paid every other Friday. So that's going to be 26 paydays this year. So how much do I need to save each year or each payday to make that happen? Well, the truth is you only need about $76.92 to make that happen. $76.92. I thought I had that on my slide, but I don't. So here's an example of, it doesn't take a lot, right? Just a little bit will do. If you was able to save $35 a week in 5 years, you'd have about 10 grand. Assuming you can earn about 3% interest a year, right? So that's it. Those are the 3 things that it takes to achieve your goals. Number 1, begin with the end in mind. Number 2, write your goals down. And number 3, take action now, right? Begin with the end in mind, write them down and take action. Begin with the end in mind, write them down and take action. So now what? What do you might be asking? Well, then, if you need further information about this topic or any other financial topic, like I said, we do have some tools and things that we use to help people. We do workshops and seminars all across the United States, but mostly here in the Houston area. That's where our home base is. We do have a money course called Money University. So if you liked this particular lesson, there's a whole online course that's in the same format where you watch the videos, you get the workbooks, and you can just walk yourself through the getting to a better financial place. And also you can get more information about me on my website, LonnieMatthews.com. And depending on when you look at this webinar, we are in the process of revamping that website. So it's probably going to be ready about mid-January before that website is back up and running. We brought it down to add some things to it and make it a little bit more user-friendly. But again, this has been Lonnie Matthews. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. Right, and always look for more of these each month. I plan on doing a different one on a different topic. I've got to make sure I'm committed. I've set the goal. Now I just got to be committed to doing the work. Right, that's my thing. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. This is Lonnie Matthews.